Ladies and gentlemen, the Didache, the oral teachings of the 12 apostles, the first teachings that they shared with potential converts to Christianity as they met them. It was written down later into a document. We have it here. So far, we've covered the first 4 chapters, which comprise a section called The Way of Life. Today, we begin in chapter 5 with a section called The Way of Death. If you haven't seen the first part, be sure to check it out. Because today, we're jumping into a part that deals with those deep things that the apostles shared that would have instilled fear into those that heard the words. And the way of death is this. First of all, it is evil and full of curse, murders, adulteries, lust, fornications, thefts, idolatries, magic, arts, witchcrafts, rapines, false witnesses, hypocrites, double-heartedness, deceit, haughtiness, depravity, self-will, greediness, filthy talking, jealousy, overconfidence, loftiness, boastfulness, persecutions of the good, hating truth, loving a lie, not knowing a reward for righteousness, not cleaving to good nor to righteous judgment, watching not that for which is good, but for that which is evil, from whom meekness and endurance are far, loving vanities, pursuing requital, not pitying a poor man, not laboring for the afflicted, not knowing him that made them, murderers of children, destroyers of the handiwork of God, turning away from that and those who are in want, afflicting him that is distressed, advocates of the rich, lawless judges of the poor, utter sinners. Be delivered, children, from all these. Now, chapter 5 seems to recap a lot of the things that are listed in the Way of Life. In the Way of Life, we're told, avoid these things and instead do these. Well, under the Way of Death, chapter 5 comes right out of the gate telling us about a lot of things that we do on a daily basis that lead to death, final death. Let's go over chapter 5 in a little bit of detail, and then we'll take a look at chapter 6 together as well. But the way of death is this. First, it is evil and full of cursing. Murders, adulteries, covetous desires, fornications, thefts, idolatries, witchcraft, sorceries, plunderings. Now, what we have to take note of is it's not just talking about the daily sins that take place in the physical natural world. It's talking about supernatural sinfulness here. Let's go one at a time. First of all, the way of death is evil. Evil leads to death. It's interesting. Anybody who's been in recovery for any period of time, from any type of addiction or mental illness, what are we taught? That the path we were on, there's only 3 outcomes: jails, institutions, and death. Overdoses lead to death. Not crying out for help to the Lord or our loved ones can lead to death. Cursing. Well, this answers the question we often get regarding the Bible about whether curse words are a sin. Well, I would say they are. I mean, obviously Proverbs tells us to use proper speech, not to speak like a dullard. Well, this tells us that cursing is, but cursing in this case means using the name of the Lord in vain, invoking an actual curse. Murders, adulteries, covetous desires. Murders, self-explanatory. Adulteries, we use the example of Chris Watts in another video. And how in that chapter it said, hey, anger leads to murder. Hey, lust leads to fornication. Hey, when you have lust, it leads to fornication. It leads to anger, which leads to passion, which leads to murder. Now, of course, we couldn't just call Chris Watts a sinner that had fallen from grace. We had to come up with a new psychological term for him: covert narcissism. That's New Age, naturalistic, morally relativistic society for you. Covetous desires goes right along with the commandment of not coveting thy neighbor's wife or anything that is thy neighbor's. Do we have covetous desires? I'm sure that we all do. I know I do. Fornication, theft, idolatries. Don't steal, don't fornicate. Idolatries, anything that gets put ahead of the Lord God as number one in our lives, right? Now, here is where we made the connection to videos I had made in the past on the Code of Hammurabi. Interestingly, this great code that's looked at as the foundation for secular law in human existence, we get witchcrafts, sorceries, plundering, false witnessing, hypocrisy, duplicity, guile, arrogance, malice. These are all viewed in the context of these supernatural witchcrafts and sorceries. Do we get this story in the Bible? Yes, we do. Simon Magus in the book of Acts. Do we get further details about it? Yes, we do. Books 2 and 3 in the Ecclesiastical History of the Church by Eusebius of Nicomedia. We have covered these things in videos. Persecutions of the good. Persecuting good people. Hating truth. How many people do you know that hate truth? You know how much hate mail I get just from this channel? I forget the famous American author, but he says something like this: when you tell people the truth, make it funny or they'll kill you. And I totally get that. People don't like hearing the truth. They like hearing that what they think is the truth. Because it's uncomfortable to hear the truth, because it often stretches our worldview. Loving falsehood. Boy, don't we love ourselves some falsehood. We can lie to ourselves about the way things are when they really aren't. Not acknowledging the reward of righteousness. That's an interesting one. Not acknowledging the reward of righteousness. Not seeing the work of God in our own lives or others. Because God provides for the needs of each person, and sometimes He rewards us for our righteousness and steadfastness. But it might appear as a challenge. Remember in Romans 5, we hear about this, that once we're inside the salvation of Jesus Christ, doesn't mean life gets perfect. It means God uses tests to build up our characters. Good neither to righteous judgment. Watchful, not toward good, but toward evil. I know it probably doesn't mean this, but I can't help but think of television. How many times on a daily basis in the modern world do we put something on the television and our conscience pricks us a dozen times while we watch it? I will admit guilt first. I watched Game of Thrones. I fell into it. I'm just admitting it flat out. I'm admitting it before our congregation. I saw a few episodes of it. I was very intrigued. It had good dialogue, good characters. Rhetoric and body language at that level matter, and it's fascinating to watch and how people interact and use those things. And I was totally hooked. And then I started from the beginning and I binge watched it all. And it is full of violence. It is full of sex. It is full of all the things God tells us not to. Another thing, heavy hard rock music. Not so much anymore, but I used to be in the music industry and I never thought of music in any way possible as sinful or not glorifying to God. I felt it was a totally separate category. But now sometimes when I feel a little nostalgic and I listen to that old music, I find myself going, is this glorifying to God? I'm not judging you if you listen to rock music. Please don't think that. In this chapter alone, we're going to learn to each his own. We're all held to the level that to which we have attained according to Paul. May ye be delivered, my children, from all these. Now, let me jump on to chapter 6, because this is where we're going to get some very interesting things that's going to lift our spirits after hearing about all these horrible things that lead to death. See that no one cause you to err from this way of teaching, since apart from God it teaches you. For if you are able to bear all the yoke of the Lord, you will be perfect. But if you are not able, what are you able to do? It's saying do what you can. Wow. If you're not able to bear the full yoke of the Lord, do what you can. And concerning food, bear what you are able. But against that which is sacrificial to idols, be exceedingly on your guard, for it is the service of dead gods. That's more of a modern English rendition of it. I had to do it that way to kind of memorize it, but I want to read it to you in the Old English because it's a little clearer. That tells us two really fascinating things in here. One, see that no man lead thee astray from this way of teaching, since he teacheth thee apart from God. For if thou canst bear all the yoke of the Lord, thou shalt be perfect. But if thou canst not, do what thou canst. Take up the yoke and do the best you can. Now, concerning food, bear what thou canst, but refrain utterly from meat offered to idols, for it is a service of dead gods. In the earlier videos of The Way of Life, we learned of a term called augury, which meant watching the birds to learn and prophesy. This is fascinating because think of the Jerusalem Council. Paul comes in. He's been teaching the Gentiles. Peter has had a few interaction with the Gentiles. The Judaizers come in and say, look, they can't be Christians unless they at least get circumcised. What was the net of that meeting? They said, look, fine, bring them into the fold, but they cannot drink blood or eat meat offered to the dead. Well, where does this come from? And we hear it again here. Remember that early the Christians were forced down into the catacombs. On one hand, this is happening. On the other hand, there's a Roman holiday that happens once a year where families go down into the catacombs to visit dead relatives and honor them, and they eat meals with them, and they leave behind food and drink there that are meant to honor the dead. Well, this is a no-no, and God and the apostles are teaching again and again, don't eat the food and drink offered to the dead. Don't eat anything and drink anything offered to idols. Well, that is very interesting. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to stop there. That gives us chapter 5 and 6 of the Didache, the second part, the way that leads to death. I'm going to do a separate video on chapter 7 because it concerns baptism on its own. If you want to support our work, please do via PayPal. The link's in the video description. We also have Venmo and Cash App. Purchase one of the books that I've written off Amazon.com/author/NicholasGarrett. Visit our revamped Teespring store where you can get a wide variety of things from shirts to mugs to tote bags, even masks. Forgive me, I know. I'll do a video on masks for private members only. And visit our new website, EvangelistNickGarrett.com. We're going to continue to build that up and have that thing working to spread the word of the Lord out there. Guys, I love you so much, and I appreciate your support and that you're watching the videos. Like it, leave a comment, get a discussion going, share it with people you know, and say, hey, there's this crazy guy, but he says some pretty cool stuff. Any of that kind of stuff helps. God bless you all, my friends, and may your work today bear fruit. I have a special request for our deacons and archbishops among the membership. Please take a few minutes today to pray for James R., someone who's been with our channel since the beginning, followed our progress since before it was a channel and it was just a book. Somebody that has been a great friend to the channel, and he needs our prayer. He's in the hospital getting some treatment. If you could please just lift him up in your prayers, we would really appreciate that. We need you prayer warriors, and that's something that the deacons and archbishops can certainly handle. Look forward to talking to you guys soon. Thanks.